Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to another insightful program this afternoon entitled Analyzing HR Functions and Spotting Improvement Areas. Your presenter is Andrew Ondari. Welcome. HR functions are the activities that we undertake as HR managers, and these are the roles for which we are employed to do. There are quite a number of them that we do on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, and these form part of our job descriptions. And for that reason, we are going to look at areas within these functions that should be audited for purposes of achieving our departmental objectives, as well as ensuring efficiency and effectiveness of our human resource department. This is a very important area of audit because it falls squarely within our mandate. We can leave everything else, but focus on these HR functions and still be successful. When talking of spotting improvement areas, these are weaknesses or gaps that should be addressed after the audit. We shall be looking at the ways in which we shall identify those gray areas that need improvement. The fact that we may be experiencing weaknesses or having gaps in our functions does not mean that we are failures. Those challenges exist in every organization and they become lessons learned. And therefore, by conducting a functional HR audit, we are spotting or identifying opportunities in areas that we may need improvement. So what are the key topics that we are going to discuss in this audit? One is an evaluation of all the audit functions, or HR functions in our department. I've given 8 functions, 2 of which are an extension of the first one, particularly onboarding and succession planning, which could be falling under recruitment and selection. So we shall look at 7 functions which most HR managers perform and identify areas in which we can audit, and then later on identifying any weaknesses or gaps that should be addressed. Secondly, we shall be looking at how we can identify opportunities for improvement, especially in relation to gaps or weaknesses. A weakness means that a process or a function exists, only that it is not working properly or is not meeting the expectations. And talking of a gap, which are opportunities as well, it means that a policy does not exist or a procedure is non-existent. So there is a gap. So there is a difference between opportunities or weaknesses and gaps. So weaknesses means that there is something in existence, but is not working properly or is not achieving objectives. And the gaps, it means that it does not exist, and therefore we need to create one. We shall be looking at the various methodologies of identifying these weaknesses and gaps, and also look at ways in which we can improve. And lastly, we will be looking at the challenges that HR managers may be facing in relation to evaluating or auditing the functions of HRM. There are many challenges, but I will mention a few, which in my opinion are key and can easily make the audit process fail. Let us start with the first one, but before that, we will also be looking at the next steps after identifying challenges. What next? What should be done by the HR managers? There are quite a number of things that we can do after identifying those challenges. So the first part of this program is an introduction where we are saying that functional HR audit is a systematic process of reviewing or assessing the efficiency and the effectiveness of the key HR functions. Efficiency has to do with the resource utilization. How much resources are we using in order to perform these functions? There are three key resources, as I have mentioned before. One is the human resource. How many people do we have to perform all these functions? The second resource is money or finance. How much do we spend in performing these functions? And we will be identifying the functions shortly. All the activities take money or require money. And that is why on an annual or quarterly basis, we prepare budgets to finance the HR activities. So the second resource is finance. The last resource is physical resources, such as computers, machines, and tools. These physical resources again help us to perform the HR functions to achieve the organizational objectives or strategies. So when we review or evaluate the functions, we are going to look at the level of efficiency in terms of resource utilization. An efficient person is one who optimizes resources, meaning that you use enough resources without wastage. The other aspect of reviewing the HR function is the effectiveness. We all know that effectiveness has to do with the results or outcomes. An effective person is one who produces desired results. And in terms of HR function, we are looking at several results. One, customer satisfaction. Two is revenue generation. Three is profit making, especially for organizations that are in private business, which are profit making. Four is competitiveness. that as an organization, we need to be competitive in the market. And a competitive organization is one that has the right products, the right quality of employees, and that has a large market share compared with the other players. So in this program of HR function audit, we are going to look at the level of efficiency and the effectiveness with which we are performing our HR functions. Again, this is done without losing sight of the key audit areas. One, the policies. Are the functions guided by policies? Two, processes. Are there SOPs, which are standard operating procedures that govern the performance of our functions? And lastly, systems. Do we have adequate and functional systems that will help us to conduct these functions? For example, recruitment requires a system. Training requires a system. Performance appraisal and management requires a system. So all these are reviewed against the policies, processes, and systems. So if they are efficient and effective, we should be able to optimize the resources and also achieve our intended results. By evaluating these functions, as I have indicated, we are able to identify inefficiencies. Inefficiencies relate to what I've just mentioned, that we are not optimizing our resources. There is a tendency of people thinking that reducing cost is being efficient. That is not necessarily the case. Because sometimes when we reduce cost or using minimum resources, we are likely the operations of an organization. We suffocate the activities of our organizations. So in the pretense of cutting cost, we end up being inefficient or ineffective. Secondly, we are going to identify skill gaps, especially in an environment like ours, where there are many emerging issues like technology. We should always be updating the skills and knowledge of our employees. And we are going to look at training and development as one of the functional areas where we identify skills and knowledge gaps. Secondly, we can identify skills gaps by conducting performance appraisals. As it were, for training to make sense, it should be able to bridge performance gaps. So how do we identify performance gaps? It is by way of conducting performance appraisals, where employees are not meeting their deadlines, they are experiencing challenges. We should be able to identify that and identify the root causes. We should be looking at the root cause analysis as one of the ways of identifying opportunities for improvement. So once we have identified the causes of the gaps, some of which could be as a result of lack of skills and knowledge. So we will identify skills and knowledge through one, training needs analysis, and two, performance evaluation or appraisal. Thirdly, we will be able to identify outdated practices, meaning that some of the activities we undertake have gone beyond the use by date. Use by date means they have expired. Expiry can come as a result of changes in our environment or rigidity in our systems. We might be rigid because we are not adaptable to change. And lastly, by auditing the HR functions, high levels of compliance. Compliance with what I had mentioned earlier, 3 aspects. 1, the national labor laws. 2, industry standards. And 3, our own internal policies. So compliance will be looked at holistically in terms of those 3 aspects. And our internal policies. And then lastly, expected that as HR auditors, we will be proactive as opposed to being reactive. Proactive means that we are able to identify issues or challenges in advance and take corrective measures in time. We don't wait until problems start cropping up, and that is when we take action. By conducting the functional HR audits, we are able to identify in advance, that is proactively, the activities that are outdated, the skill gaps, and the inefficiency in our system. And this is what will drive continuous improvement and long-term sustainability. Continuous improvement arises from the regular audits that we shall be performing, either quarterly, biannually, or annually. And in terms of sustainability, that we are able to continue functioning effectively by conducting these HR audits. Our HR department is said to be sustainable if it is able to support its activities and it is able to produce the results that we have mentioned. So the HR audit is able to identify those weaknesses and gaps and take corrective measures in time to ensure sustainability. And we will look at ways in which an organization can be sustainable, especially through the HR lens, where we are looking at all the HR functions, because this is what will drive organizational success. So having said that, I want us to look at the HR functions that should be audited for the success of the HR department and the organization in general. As I had indicated, there are 2 functions that could be put together under recruitment and selection, and that is onboarding and orientation, as well as succession planning. These are separate. I've separated this for purposes of creating a clear understanding of what recruitment is and selection, and what are the areas to look at, and also onboarding and orientation. These are part of recruitment and selection. Because recruitment and selection does not end at the point at which we all give a job offer. It goes beyond there to include orientation and onboarding. And again, because we are going and concerned and are continuing business, we will require people to occupy senior positions. And again, recruitment and selection kicks in because we need to identify successors of those people who leave. So succession planning can as well be put under recruitment and selection. But for the purpose of this audit, I've separated them because succession planning is quite broad and helps to ensure that we have an adequate pipeline of talented employees, and also is one of the aspects of employee engagement and retention. So I will go straight to the first one, which is recruitment and selection. This is a key function because it brings on board people with the right skills, knowledge, experience, and abilities. Under what conditions do we engage in recruitment and selection? I'll mention 3. 1, when an organization is new. For all of us, if you want to start your own business, you will need new employees. So you will have to recruit and select people with the right qualification. Secondly, recruitment and the selection is conducted when the organization is expanding. Expansion can be looked at in 2 ways. One, in terms of markets. You may want to go to a new market like in Tanzania, Uganda, or Rwanda to take advantage of the East African community market. Or you go to Sudan. That's a new market. So when you are expanding into a new market, you will require new employees to perform functions in those offices. And those of us who are familiar with the international human resource management, recruitment may be required to fill those vacant positions in those countries where we are being hosted. So there are several approaches that we can use in recruiting people to occupy positions in international markets. One is using host country nationals. 2 is using parent country nationals. And 3 is using third country nationals. Those are aspects that you can discuss at a later date, but I'm trying to look at the circumstances under which we can conduct recruitment and selection. I've mentioned 2. 1, when the organization is new. 2, when the organization is expanding, either in terms of products or in terms of new markets. The third circumstance requiring recruitment is when employees exit the organization. They can exit voluntarily or involuntarily. Some of these methods include 1, resignation, 2, redundancy, 3, retirement, and 4, which is natural for all of us, death. And there are many other ways employees can leave, including absconding. So when these 3 things happen, 1, the organization is new, 2, the organization is expanding, and 3, employees are leaving, we engage in recruitment and selection. So again, we ask ourselves, how successful is our recruitment and selection, irrespective of the positions that we are filling? I have indicated several benchmarks which will tell us our success or failure rates. 1 is the time to hire. Where do we start counting the time? The time starts from requisitioning the vacant positions. That once a department has realized there is a vacancy and sends a requisition to the HR department, the process begins. So we start counting from the time a HR or departmental head has made a requisition with a view to filling a vacant position. And the time continues up to when we have onboarded the employees who are finally selected. So we look at the time taken. If we are hiring 3 or 4 people, we look at the time we took from requisitioning to placement and onboarding for all the 3 positions. And if the time is more than the standard set for an industry, then we are said to be doing poorly. According to industry standards, especially in IT organizations, the standard time is 45 days. Because in IT industry, the rate of turnover is said to be higher than in many other industries. So you can imagine if you are taking more than 45 days and you are hiring people, such a long time is likely to affect finding of suitable replacements for those people who have left. Secondly is the cost per hire. How much do we spend? So the question again we are asking is this: how do we identify the cost? We look at the cost element, or we try to cost all the activities that we undertake. One of the cost areas in recruitment is advertising. And again, this depends on where we are advertising our vacant positions. Assuming that we are advertising in mainstream media, that is electronic or print media, there are cost implications. So take the example of print media. To publish an advertisement of 1 page will cost between 700 and 900,000, a whole page. That is the cost of hiring that one person in relation to advertising. Another cost area is interviewing the candidates. What are the costs associated with interview? One is the facilitation of the panelists who will be sitting in the interview. In some organizations, these panelists are paid for sitting during these interviews. 2, the water and electricity costs during the interviews. 3, the traveling costs for organizations that pay or reimburse the traveling expenses of their potential candidates. I have experience of organizations that pay their candidates their transport costs to and from the interview venue, as well as accommodation. That is the cost. And another cost is background checks. The telephone lines may cost some money. How much did you spend in calling the people with the information about the potential candidate? That includes their referees or the schools and the colleges they attended. Those are costs. In some organizations, the interviews are conducted outside the organization. So the cost of hiring a space, probably in an office outside or a hotel, is another cost. So what am I driving at? is that we must cost the whole process of recruitment and selection and do an average. How much did we spend for all the vacant positions? Divide that by the number of vacancies. That will give us the average cost per hire. Average cost per hire. The total cost over the number of vacancies. That will give us the average cost per hire. And then there is the element of quality of hire. It is expected that at the end of a recruitment and selection process, we must end up with the right quality of employees. So who are these quality hires? One, people who can do the job for which they were hired. Two, people who can produce the results that are expected. Three, people who can integrate very easily with the others once they have been hired. Because I believe we have experience of employees who come and cause conflicts within the first week of hire. So the quality has to do with the ability to produce results, the ability to gel with others, and also ability to perform their duties. How will we know that there is quality of hire? We can conduct a survey on the new hires by designing a questionnaire or conducting interviews to ask existing employees about the performance and the relationships of the new hires with the other employees. So that should not be a problem, because as a HR auditor, we should be hiring the right people. The other aspect that we are going to audit as a benchmark is the level of satisfaction of the candidates with the organization. We are going to look at satisfaction with the different aspects or parameters. One, satisfaction with the induction process. Two, satisfaction with the working conditions. Three, satisfaction with the compensation rates. With all the aspects that I've indicated. If the score is low, say 25%, then we are not doing well. And if we are not doing well, there is room for improvement. And that is why in our topic, we said identifying areas of improvement. So we can improve the process of recruitment and selection by identifying those areas in which the new employees are not happy with. The other benchmark is acceptance rate. How many people? Adam, kindly mute your mic. Thank you. Offer acceptance rate means the number or percentage of people who accepted the job offers and are still continuing working. So we look at the number of people who are against the number who have left. So we look at the number who have accepted over the number of people already there, and multiply that by 100, we get the acceptance rate. A low acceptance rate means that our recruitment and selection process did not have what we call the predictive validity of the selection criteria. That we selected people without considering many factors about them. And that is why in some cases, managers or organizations decline to offer jobs to people who seem to be overqualified. Because soon after a job offer, these people may quickly leave the organization, and that becomes a cost to us. The second last thing under recruitment and selection is the sourcing channels. How effective are they? Sourcing channels are the methods or tools that we use to attract potential job candidates. And usually there are two sources of candidates. One, internal sources, and two, external sources. The internal sources relate to people eligible for promotion. So we are looking for people internally for purposes of promotion, or in some cases, transfer. So what methods do we use, or what channel do we use to attract people from within? One is notice boards within the organization. Two is emails. And three is word of mouth. So we will be asking ourselves, especially during the interviews, how the candidates got to know about the vacant jobs. So if it's an internal source, some will say emails, some will say they saw a notice board, and others will say they were told. If you count the numbers based on the sources, you will determine which of the internal channels gave you the highest number. And if this is repeated several times, you undertake recruitment and selection, then that will give you an indication of the most suitable internal channel that you can use in sourcing for candidates. External channels or methods are newspapers, television, radio, and internet. Internet may relate to 3 or 4 things. 1, our websites. 2, social media. Or 3, public notice boards. All these are sources of candidates. So to assess the effectiveness, you will ask the candidates how they got to know about the vacant jobs. And again, some will say they saw it online. Others will say they saw a public notice, or others will say they were referred. So those are external methods of recruitment. That is attracting candidates. And again, you ask the question, how much did it cost using this channel to attract the numbers? If you find that you advertised in the national media, especially in public entities, where it is a requirement that you advertise in a national print media, and then you find that out of the 50 candidates that applied, only 2 got the information through advertisements, then it means that the advertisement is not working for you. So when you are doing an audit in terms of the sourcing channel, you look at the numbers of people who applied through the various media and look at how cost effective it was. Lastly is the application drop-off rate that some people might apply and they don't make follow-ups, or they are no longer available to move to the next stage. How do we determine that? You look at the applicants and their numbers. And then when you generate a shortlist, naturally you will call them or inform them about the interview. When you call some of them, they may say that they already are engaged elsewhere. That is a drop-off, meaning that they were not able to complete the whole process. And why should you be interested in the drop-off rate? One reason is the time it took for you to get back to them. And again, it goes to bullet one, the time taken to hire. If you take a very long time, some of the candidates may have gone to other organizations. And again, that becomes a risk because we have lost talent. And that is why time in terms of hire becomes critical to avoid this drop-off rates. Or in some cases, a person attends an interview, and when you are doing a background check, all is complete, you are giving them an offer, they are not available to take the offer. Why? Because they already have another engagement, meaning that they have already dropped off. So drop-off rate might be attributed to our own process where we are taking a long time, or two, the offer in our advertisement is not attractive, or three, the general environment where we conducted the interviews might have been a red flag. I remember one time we were looking for salespeople, and we were having an interview meeting next to the workplace, and that is an office in a depot. So when some of the candidates looked at the environment, they said that they will not work around where there is beer, because this was an agency distributing beer. And here is an office next to the depot. So some of them dropped off because they could not countenance the environment in which they are going to work. So drop-off rates can be a concern to us, and there should be an element of audit, because we want to ensure that the candidates who applied go all the way to onboarding and remaining in the organization for as long as possible. So that is one function that we should audit. Why should we focus a lot of our attention in this recruitment? Because it will make a difference when we hire the right people at the right time, doing the right things. And that is why we look at all the benchmarks so that we don't make a mistake. And when we make mistakes, we suffer the consequences. That is why some people drop off. So we have to go to the second candidate. And if the second candidate does not accept the offer, we go to the third, and some organizations go to the fourth. But ideally, or as a good practice, if the third candidate declines, then we re-advertise. And again, going back to bullet number 2, where there is the element of cost, the advertisement is costly. So we must get it right from the very beginning. Adan, I would request that you mute your mic. Adan, mute your mic. Thank you. The second function that we are going to audit is onboarding. I have deliberately avoided onboarding in recruitment and selection because this is where we have to evaluate or audit it. So what are we going to look at in onboarding and orientation? It is the effectiveness of the process. Onboarding and orientation is a process of integrating new employees to the organization. By integration, we mean that we are bringing them so that they can fit into the social and cultural environment. Fit into the social and the cultural environment. That is what we call integration. So what are we going to look at or audit when we are onboarding people? Number one is the time taken to productivity. What do we mean? That a new employee who has been hired should take the shortest time possible to reach the productivity levels of those people who left or the expected standards that have been set. So time is of essence, because the moment we take a longer time for employees to produce results, then we are not doing well. Especially in an environment where we have sensitive customers. That if a new employee takes a long time, the customers become dissatisfied. They become unhappy because of delays. So the delivery time of our goods and services and also the quality of what we produce should be done within the shortest time possible. So again, this will depend on the quality of our onboarding. So employees can take a relatively long time if the onboarding was not done well. And the question could be, when do we start our onboarding? Ideally, it should start before the employee reports to the organization, so that they can make adequate preparations to start work, because they will have cleared with their supervisors or managers their expectations. So time to productivity should not be long. Secondly, is the new hire retention rates. How many people are left after they have been hired? That suppose we were to fill 10 vacant positions within a particular period. So when we audit, we should go back and find out how many have left and how many are remaining. So those who are left, you divide by the average number of people, meaning those who are there and those who are there now. You multiply that by 100, you get your retention rate. The number of people who are there over the total number that joined, you multiply that by 100, you get your retention rate. It is expected that we retain our employees after recruitment and selection, as well as onboarding and orientation. Why should we talk about retention rate in relation to onboarding? It is during onboarding that we clarify the expectation of both the employee and the employer. So during onboarding, we introduce the employee to the organization, particularly to the following: one, the policies; two, rules and regulations, which is a code of conduct; three, training and development opportunities, as well as trade union matters. So if an employee is uncomfortable during onboarding, they might request to leave. But if they are okay with onboarding, then they are likely to stay for a long time. And that is why we should look at the onboarding vis-a-vis retention rate. The third benchmark is the level of satisfaction with the onboarding process. So again, you look at the number of people who are hired and how happy they are with the various aspects of the onboarding process. So if they are happy, the score should be high. A score of 85% or more is a good one. And in that case, we celebrate ourselves for conducting an effective onboarding and orientation process. And if it is below 85, it means that there are chances of employees be satisfied and eventually walk away. The second last parameter or benchmark is the completion rate of the onboarding tasks or activities. We should have a schedule of activities when we are doing onboarding. This schedule of activities could be: one, welcoming the new entrants; two, introducing them to the various offices; three, introducing them to the policies and the culture of the organization. And the last thing that is usually done is to show the new entrant the desk where they are going to work from and handing them over to their supervisors. All these are activities in the onboarding process.
Mr. Andrew, if Mr. Guyo can mute.
I have asked him several times. Mr. Adam Guyo, please mute your mic.
There's a lot of echo coming from his side.
Or someone, I mean, the administrator can mute you.
Adam Guyo, please mute your mic. Adam, we are waiting for you. Please mute your mic.
It looks like it's not on his table. Yeah, now you're muted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that interruption. So we were looking at the completion rate of the onboarding activities, and that in some cases, this process can be interrupted and we end up not completing the process. So if we don't complete the process, it means that the employee has not been properly inducted and therefore may not perform to the expected levels. There are several things that can affect the completion rate. One, availability of the people to conduct the induction. Two, an emergency where employees may have to be evacuated and stopping the orientation and onboarding process. Or 3, a sudden exit of the inductor, the person inducting the inductee, or the person being onboarded. An employee might leave, and the leaving might be due to termination or resignation or some other. But again, as HR managers, we are proactive. If there is such a thing that is likely to affect the completion, we should be able to tell it in advance. And if possible, look for a plan B. In case an employee suddenly leaves, there is always somebody ready to step in. And lastly is peer integration score. This is the level of interaction between the new employee and the existing employees. So how do we know that the employee has been properly integrated? It's by getting feedback from the department to which the new employee has been posted. So we give the existing employees a tool like a questionnaire or interview them to determine whether the new entrant has been able to gel with others in the organization. What are the indicators that there has been poor integration? 1, complaints from existing employees. They may complain about their reporting time, about their performance levels, or their levels of cooperation. 2, we can tell whether there has been poor integration by looking at the level of teamwork. That the new employee might be isolated because he has not got the hang of the teamwork that existed. So that is an indicator of poor peer integration. Or 3, the employee has not been able to internalize certain cultural practices or values, such as teamwork. You see them in the office when others are working as a team elsewhere. That's an observation that you can make. So peer integration score is determined by the feedback given by the existing employee in regard to the new entrant. If there are 10 employees in a department and 9 of them say that the employee is not a team player, that becomes like 99% poor integration. So the new employee has not been integrated well. So what do we do if the employee has not been integrated? 1, we train employees. And 2, we create a buddy system to avoid this poor integration. A buddy is an existing employee who is partnered with the new employee so that they can learn the ropes of how the organization functions, the teams that exist, and the expectations of the new employee. So those are the key benchmarks that we are going to address when it comes to onboarding. But remember, I said that onboarding is part of recruitment and selection. If you wish to separate it like I have, you are free to do so. I have said quite a lot. I want to invite a few questions if there is anybody with a question before I move on. I started with an introduction where I said that functional audit involves a review of all the functions to identify inefficiencies or gaps. 2, I have looked at 2 functions, recruitment and selection, as well as onboarding. If there is anybody who has a question on recruitment and onboarding, the floor is yours. Anybody with a question or a comment to make? I will start from the bottom. Rosaline Mwema, if you are there, please ask a question or make a comment. Robert Mutange, if you are there. Monica. Max. Mary Kay. And lastly, Judy, if you are there.
Okay, how are you, Mr. Andrew?
Fine. This is Judy.
Yeah, this is Judy.
Yes, go on.
I would want to know. You taught us about how to get the cost per hire. And I would want to know, how does getting this cost per hire assist the organization? Like, yes, you have gotten the cost you have used to hire this one person. How is that detail really important, and how does it help the organization?
Okay, thank you, Judy. If I may answer your question in two ways. One, cost per hire is very important, especially when we are preparing a budget for recruitment and selection. We need to cost all the activities so that we prepare our budget for recruitment and selection. We will have a budget for advertising, a budget for compensating or facilitating interviewers or even interviewees. So one of the reasons why we need to determine the cost per hire is to look at the budget we are going to incur when we are conducting future recruitment and selection activities. And secondly, when it comes to cost cutting, especially in an economic environment like ours, where the cost of living has shot beyond the roofs and organizations are cutting their costs. So one of the ways in which we can cut costs is to look at the cost centers, like in recruitment and selection, training, performance management, and others. So when we identify costs, we should be able to find a way of reducing that cost. If the cost was on advertisement, what are the alternatives that we can use which are less costly? For example, referrals do not cost much. Internal postings may not cost much. Or using electronic media, like, let's say, technological media, like websites and social media. These are fairly cost effective, especially when an organization wants to reduce its operational costs. So there are two ways of looking at it. One, for budgeting purposes, and two, identifying areas that could cost the organization so that we can reduce cost. I guess, Judy, I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. It's really informing.
Thank you very much. You are welcome. If there is nobody else who will ask a question. Yes, go on, Adam.
Sorry, I was just going to a biological break, so I just came back. Sorry.
Okay. You have a question or a comment to make?
No, I have a question on the issue of accountability.
Yes.
How do you deal with the resistance or non-compliance from departments or individuals responsible for implementing the corrective actions?
I request that you ask the question again. There's an echo on your side.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, how do you deal with the resistance or non-compliance from the departments or individuals responsible for implementing the corrective actions?
Okay. You are asking, how do you deal with the resistance or
Yes.
non-compliance with certain corrective actions that have been recommended?
Correct.
Thank you.
Put it on the chat.
There are several things that you can do with people who don't comply. As HR managers, we are responsible for employee discipline. And if a person does not comply, that amounts to insubordination. Refusal to obey a lawful order, which falls within the job description of an individual. So if it is within the job description of that individual and he or she is not cooperating or refusing to cooperate, then that becomes a disciplinary issue. And I believe we know what we can do when somebody refuses to obey lawful orders. But again, we are human. We must also put on a human face. Probably they are refusing for certain valid reasons. As a HR manager, you should be able to find out the reasons why they are refusing. It could be something to do with lack of resources, like computers or tools, or they may refuse because of the working conditions. For example, in a dusty area, you assign a person there and you don't give them protective gear. Or it could be the assignment is outside his or her job description and they may not be able to do that. So for us, as HR managers, we have a human face by way of trying to find out what are the reasons for non-compliance. And this requires that you have a one-on-one meeting with them or with the team that is refusing and find a way forward. And again, in an environment where people work as a team, this should not be a problem unless this is something related to an individual. That is why we need to encourage teamwork when we are conducting any recommendations or when we are implementing any recommendations. So what I've said are three. One, you take corrective action by way of disciplinary process because that is insubordination. Two, discussing the reasons why the employee has refused or is not complying. And three, ensuring that people work as a team where possible. So Adam, those are the three ways in which you can approach non-compliance.
Yes, Mr. Andrew, I have another last question.
Yes.
The last. Who owns the process of ensuring follow-up through, like HR, internal audit, or the senior leadership?
Who owns the process of doing what?
The non-compliance or audit report. Who owns the process of ensuring follow-through? Is it the HR, is it the internal audit, or is it the senior leadership?
Okay. We all take responsibility for our actions. As HR managers, we conduct our HR audit. It's our responsibility to ensure that our audit recommendations are complied with. And if it is an internal audit team that could be drawn from different departments, then the committee of that audit team should be able to take action. So depending on where the non-compliance is happening, if it is within HR and we have conducted a HR audit, it is the responsibility of the HR manager. If it is the internal audit, which usually done all the audits, it is the internal audit team to ensure compliance. But again, this should be done in consultation with the host department. That if an employee in HR has refused to adhere to or comply with an audit, which has arisen from finance, the head of finance should be able to contact the head of HR and deal with the issue at the departmental level. But if the issue becomes difficult to solve, we can escalate it to a higher level in organizations with HR directors. And if this issue is cross-cutting, then we can escalate it to a higher level, up to the last level where the chief executive may have to be brought into the loop. But before it gets there, we should be able to have a conversation with the person or the team that is not complying and get the reasons why they are not complying. So it should be a team effort if the audit was done as a team. But the head of the audit team should be able to address the issue by bringing together those audit team members to address the issues that have not been complied with. So if it's a disciplinary issue where somebody is not complying, then HR comes in because we are in charge of discipline. And if it's a resource or any other issue outside the scope of the employee's job description, then we should be able to address it administratively, looking at the resource requirements or the procedures to be followed. Probably the employee is not following the procedures because they are not available. So I believe I've answered your question two ways. One, you can use the internal audit team, which usually does the audits. Two, you can use the HR audit team, having done the HR audit itself, or in consultation with the department. That's cross-departmental issue, then you deal with it. If all that does not yield fruit, then you can escalate that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Actually, like my organization,
Yes.
the HR manager, senior HR manager directly reports to the CEO. So it's like, and also when it comes to the audit, there's an audit manager who reports directly to the board chairman. So we are doing kind of like a three-way matching thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your questions. I now propose that we move to the next slide. And that
hello,
is...
hello, Mr. Andrew. Before we move on, I think you called out my name.
Yes.
Robert.
Yes,
and
Robert.
I was a bit struggling with muting myself. And muting myself, sorry. Yeah. So I have this concern on recruitment and selection.
Yes.
Which is very common in HR practice. The issues to do with biasness during the recruitment and selection process.
Yes.
How can we ensure that this error does not affect the quality of hire we bring on board?
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Biasness is one of the common challenges that we face during recruitment and selection. And the people can be biased because of two main reasons. One, the candidate before the panel is related to them, and they don't want to mention it. Or two, the way the candidate appears. We try to compare this candidate with others who have come before us. And that is what they call a first impression error. There are several ways in which we can address this. One, we create an objective criteria for selection. Objective in the sense that it is factual, it is measurable, and it can be tested. And that's why we use mainly quantitative measures as criteria to determine the best candidate during the interviews. So we should set clear and objective criteria for selection. Secondly, the panel must be composed of professionals. If it is a HR officer in the panel, they should be qualified in matters HR. If it is a person from finance, they should be qualified in finance. Or if it is a person in production, meaning handling machines, it should be an engineer also. So the panel must be consisting of qualified people who have the requisite training and experience in interviewing candidates, so that at the end of this process, we are rating people on their professional qualification and their potential to perform the jobs for which they are being considered. 3, we should also have declaration forms. This is declaration of interest or conflict of interest. I know some people might sign this deliberately, and yet they know that one of the candidates is a relative or a friend. But again, professionally, you are prohibited. And actually, disciplinary action should be taken if it is discovered that there was conflict of interest. Another way of ensuring non-biasness is adoption of technology, especially when it comes to shortlisting. We can feed the qualifications of these candidates into our systems and use AI to identify those candidates who qualify to be interviewed and even those who qualify to be selected. So I have said 4 things. 1, develop an objective criteria. 2, have qualified panelists. 3, have a form to be filled that is a conflict of interest form. And lastly, we should ensure professionalism where honesty and integrity should prevail. Robert, you will say that this is best said than done. If we are serious organizations, we should comply with our own policies. That compliance is very important so that we don't end up having the wrong person for the right job. And that will eventually affect our performance. So fidelity to our policies, fidelity to the law, fidelity to the code of conduct, particularly with conflict of interest, and the fidelity to our profession should be what will carry the day. Back to you, to Robert.
Yes, you've addressed the question well. Huh?
Yes.
But now there's the aspect of having biasness from the top management who are not part of the recruitment process, but they still have an impact on who comes on board.
Okay. And again, to answer your question, there are 2 things. 1, we are the advisors of the top managers on matters recruitment and selection. Why? Because we are qualified in terms of training and we have the experience to determine which candidate should be hired at the end of this process. So if there is interference from the top, give an advisory, a professional advisory that this is your position regarding the candidates who have been shortlisted or have been interviewed or selected. And if they insist that somebody must come on board, just write a note dissenting the final choice so that you are on the safe side. Otherwise, if there's no document to show that you had a different opinion, it will come back to you that you hired the wrong person and the top level manager will be free. You will be sacrificed on the chopping board. Robert?
Yes, that's okay.
Yes, thank you. So we move to training and development as another function, which we are going to audit. And this is important because we want people to acquire relevant skills and knowledge for 3 reasons. 1, perform their duties efficiently and effectively. 2, prepare their careers. And 3, for succession planning. Those are the 3 key reasons why we conduct training and development. So what are we going to look at in terms of benchmarks in relation to T&D? 1 is the training completion rate. How many people started their training and how many actually completed all the courses? Why do we look at the completion rate? Because training is an investment. We spend a lot of money training our employees, be it workshops, conferences, or formal training in a training institution. This is expensive for the organization. So the dropout rates in training and development should be monitored. That is one reason. The other reason is that when people don't complete their trainings, it means they are not able to perform or deliver results. And 3, even for their own succession planning or individual development plan, it becomes difficult because they will stagnate in their current position for a long time. For the organization, completion rate is important because it's an investment and it's a tool that is used to determine or prepare succession, especially for those who leave the organization. So it should be determined. How many people joined that training program? How many successfully completed it? So you look at those who completed against those who started, you multiply that by 100, it will give us the completion rate. It's expected that all the employees in a program should complete. But if for some reason they don't complete, they can be given another opportunity to continue or complete the training, as long as the reasons for non-completion are legitimate or valid. Secondly, I may have also talked about this, return on investment as a result of training. Returns are the values we benefit after taking people for a training and development program. Some of the returns is cost reduction. How does cost come in? Cost comes in when employees are wasteful in terms of time and money, particularly money. If people are wasting money, either in procurement or in cleaning or in other areas, that is the cost to the organization. So we take people for training so that they can acquire skills and knowledge on how to reduce wastage. So cost is a return when we reduce it. 2, increased revenue. For example, we are taking our employees for customer relations and care management. If we train people on how to take care of our customers, then at the end of this training, the employees should be able to handle the customers effectively and persuade them to buy the products of our organizations. If they buy the product, then there will be increased revenue. So again, when you audit training against the return on investment, that is revenue, you should be able to tell whether the training has yielded the results that are intended. Again, training can also facilitate or enhance innovation. So how many innovations have arisen out of conducting training and development? So those are examples of returns on investment that we get from training and development, which means that we should be able to monitor and connect training with those returns, because sometimes returns can come from other quarters, not necessarily training. So we should be able to directly link training with those returns. Just like when we identify training in its analysis, when we say that an employee needs training or there's a training need, it means there is a gap. So how do you identify gaps? You do observations, you interview, and others. So what are the indicators of gaps? And then you look at the causes. What is causing this gap? Probably it's lack of tools, you don't train. It's lack of motivation, you don't train. It is poor initial placement, you don't train. You can only train if the gap is caused by lack of skills and knowledge. So the same thing should be done when you are determining return on investment. That return can be linked to training. So if it can be linked to something else, maybe provision of machines, then that's not a return on training. Number 3, we look at post-training performance improvement. There are 3 things that you could be looking at: pre-training and post-training. Pre-training could be failure to meet targets. 2 could be time wastage or resource wastage. Or 3, experiencing difficulties. So when you take people for training, you expect these 3 aspects to be addressed. So after the training, you do an evaluation, especially on the results. Result is one of the areas we evaluate after the training, post-training. So what has the training resulted in reduced wastage? Has training resulted in improved performance? That is what we are looking at. So we should make it part of our culture that anytime employees go for training, we do an evaluation or a post-training audit to find out how well employees are performing after that training. The other aspect to be measured is satisfaction with the training program. And again, this will be done by conducting an evaluation of the training, post-training evaluation. Were they happy with the training? So what can they be happy or satisfied with? 1, the relevance of the training, meaning that the training addressed their needs. 2, the training environment. That means the training venue. Was the training venue conducive, or it was noisy, the food was bad, and the people had running stomachs? So you will look at the training venue. And another area to look at in terms of satisfaction is the methodology of training. Was the training conducted in an interesting, engaging, and a memorable way? And this largely depends on the trainer, and that is why some organizations evaluate the trainers. They have forms that they give to the trainees to evaluate the trainers. The trainers are evaluated in terms of mastery of content, their confidence, or sometimes their dressing style, because dressing can be destructive. The trainees can concentrate on the way the person is dressed and forgetting that there is content to be learned. So satisfaction with the training has to do with 1, the relevance of the training, 2, the delivery methodology, and 3, the training venue. Another aspect to be audited is the number of training hours per employee. Many of our trainings are short, like the ones that we are conducting this week. So the number of hours can easily be calculated. How much time did you spend on a training program? Why should we be interested in the number of hours? One, to ensure that the content of the training has been covered adequately. Meaning that if you give a very short time for a comprehensive training program, then the content may not be covered. Secondly, it can be in terms of costing. Sometimes we pay for training in terms of hours, especially for us consultants. There are some cases where we train people for 1 hour and it is a cost, we cost per hour. So the employers are looking at the cost of training employees hour. Or number 3 is the time taken away from the place of work to conduct trainings. And again, when you talk about attendance, employees are rated based on the number of hours they have attended work, either on a weekly or monthly or annual basis. And that will determine the attendance rate. Some people treat employees who are on training as having attended work, which is true and which is the way to go because they are not absent. They are in the training program with the consent and authority of the managers. So the number of hours can affect our productivity. That if we spend a lot of time away from the offices, our performance can be affected, especially frontline employees who are serving customers. If they spend inordinate amounts of hours attending trainings, then customers may become dissatisfied. So we are looking at 1, adequacy of time to conduct the training. 2, the level of service delivery in terms of time we are away. And 3, the cost associated with the hours employees are being trained. And the other aspect is the cost by employee. If all of us were belonging to one organization, we could easily determine the cost. Right now we are 19. And if all of us paid for this program and we belong to the same organization, we can get the figure. And from that figure, we do an average of number of employees and the cost per employee for this program. In some cases, programs vary in terms of cost. One program like this may be less costly than another one. So you do an average. How much was spent on training in a given period and how many employees attended. So you look at the total cost over the total number of employees and you will get the average cost. And again, like Judy asked, what could be the reason for looking at the cost? It's about budgeting. How much do we need to conduct trainings within a given time? And lastly is internal promotion rate, that how many employees are promoted after undertaking certain training and development programs. As a caution, we always say that don't make it automatic that when employees attend training programs, they will be promoted. You will be running into a lot of trouble. Please don't guarantee employees that once they are trained, they will be promoted. But again, what do you do then? You look at the number of employees who have been trained and therefore have become promotable. So those that you promote are those that have adequate training. So how many of those that we trained have actually been promoted? And again, it's not a guarantee that those people who have been trained should be promoted. Why? Because sometimes people may not perform even after the training. So such people are not eligible for promotion. We are only looking at people who are trained and actually been promoted as a result of the training. So those are the benchmarks that we evaluate when we are doing a training and development audit. Next is performance management audit. Performance is the reason why we hire employees. And we must put all the systems in place to ensure that the employees are performing to expectation. So this audit checks the consistency and transparency of appraisal, and the benchmarks are there. One is appraisal completion rate. Just like the other three functions we have looked at, like onboarding, how many completed the onboarding process. 2, training, how many people have completed the training programs. Or recruitment, how many people are remaining in the organization after recruitment. So if there are transparent and consistent performance management systems, we should enhance our completion rates, unless there are special reasons that can make an employee not complete an appraisal process. So completion is important because at the end of this process, we are going to make important decisions. A decision to train, a decision to promote, a decision to reward, or even a decision to demote. So once an appraisal is complete effectively, then we make those decisions. You can imagine making a decision to demote a person when they did not complete the appraisal process. And the reason for not completing is because of an administrative mistake or error. It will be unfair to that employee because he or she was not given ample time or adequate opportunity to complete the appraisal process. So completion rate is important so that we can make decisions either to promote, to train people, to transfer, or even demote. Secondly is the quality of appraisals. Quality can be looked at in 3 ways. 1, the accuracy of the results. Accuracy. Do the results reflect the actual performance of the employees? We may be aware, for example, in some organizations, the ratings are fairly vague. For example, meets expectation, 2, exceeds expectation, or 3, below expectation. Without particular measurements, it's very difficult to say somebody is above or exceeds expectation unless there is data. That data must be accurate for somebody to be said to be exceeding expectation. So we look at the targets, we look at the KPIs, and look at the timelines. And we score all of them so that we can arrive at a factual outcome. So 1, a quality appraisal is one which is based on data which is accurate. 2, the quality of data is one that is comprehensive. Quality of appraisal should be comprehensive. that we cannot possibly rate a person only on one area. Doing that, we will be biased in our appraisals. And in some cases, that is what happens in an organization, which we call an appraisal error, where employees are appraised only on one parameter, especially in parameters where they are doing well. So what do you call error? Is the halo effect, where employees are rated overall well because they have performed well in a particular area. Probably an employee is good at interpersonal skills or relations, but in terms of results, they are poor. So a manager says that this employee is excellent because he or she relates well with others. That is not the quality we are looking at. We must appraise people from all aspects, whether it is interpersonal relations, attainment of targets, attainment of their KPIs, and the time they took for them to achieve all those. And that requires that we may use a variety of appraisal methods, preferably 360-degree appraisal, or at the least peer appraisal. But if an employee is given an opportunity to rate themselves, they will be biased to give themselves 100% or something near there because of two things. One, to avoid any punishments or sanctions that may come as a result of poor performance, or two, to get rewards, especially for those who are rewarded for performing well. So the quality of appraisal may relate to the accuracy of the appraisal data, and the comprehensiveness of that data, and three, the timeliness of that appraisal. Timeliness mainly is regulated by policy. Some organizations conduct appraisals quarterly, others biannually, and others annually. So the timelines should fit within those three policy guidelines. On feedback and delivery timelines, we are talking about giving employees feedback. When employees are given feedback immediately after the appraisal, it will help them take corrective actions in or on time. If feedback is delayed, the employees will be in the dark, especially when it comes to their strengths and weaknesses. And you cannot blame them for not improving because you did not give them feedback on time. So timely feedback is very important. How long should it be given? Immediately after the appraisal, except when you need to moderate the results. Because in some cases, employees might overrate themselves, and that has to be moderated. PIP is Performance Improvement Plan or Program. So how successful are these programs? They can only be successful if the employees are supported in all ways. One, they are provided with the resources. Two, they are given appropriate or adequate time. Three, they are supported by others working in a team. And four, that they are motivated to work. Some organizations lose cases in court related to dismissal on account of performance. And they claim that they even took the employee through a PIP process. So the court is always very friendly to the employees, and they will assess the kind of support that the employee was given during PIP. If the support was not adequate, the court will always rule in favor of the employee, either to reinstate that employee or compensate that employee for the lost salaries. Lastly, on performance management is the frequency of the review process. How many times? I have indicated it can be done quarterly after every 3 months, biannually after every 6 months, or annually after every 12 months. And again, this will be guided by internal policy. So that is all about performance management. And again, if you do your own research, these are not the only areas that we evaluate or audit when it comes to performance management. But these are key areas that you can look at. So again, I can invite questions on training and development and performance management. Anybody with a question or a comment or even a compliment? Juvenia Oluoch, if you are listening to me, please ask a question or make a comment.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't have a question. I'm just but grateful.
Yes.
I'm gratefully listening to you because this is very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Asante sana. So anyone else who has a question, Grace Kariuki, if you are there, please ask.
No question for now, thanks. Only to emphasize that wrong recruitment and expect good results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Monica? Okay. We will move on.
Mwalimu, before you move on.
Yes.
Maybe a question on the PIP success rate.
Yes.
And relating to probably someone is new, they have not been able to, okay, so maybe the probation period that they've been given, they've not been very successful, so you are giving them time and putting them on a PIP plan. Does it have an expiration? I mean, what are the time frames for you to be able to say that this person either did not really succeed or they succeeded?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question. Allow me to say two things in relation to your question. Number one, performance management and appraisal is a function that is guided by policy. And therefore, it's expected that your policy should give adequate guidelines on performance management, including PIP. In many organizations that I've visited, the timelines are between 3 months and 6 months. So if your policy says 3 months, we stick to the 3 months. And if your policy says 6 months, we stick to the 6 months. However, we give room for flexibility or an element of doubt that we can extend these periods for a further 3 months or a further 6 months. Why do we extend the period? Perhaps the employee did not perform well because of factors beyond his or her control. So we extend the period. For example, there are no adequate resources to complete the program in 3 months. So you can't blame the employee for not improving their performance, or 6 months. So to answer your question, your policy should guide you. Ideally, it should be between 3 or 6 months. And again, if it is felt that 3 months is a very short time for anybody to make any meaningful improvement, it should be able to start from 6 months. But again, this depends on your policy and the patience that you have with this employee who is not performing, especially in private sector, where profit and the customer satisfaction are key. Keeping an employee around for 6 months who does not perform might be a bit unfair to your customers. So once you have provided everything humanly possible within the time period set in the policy, then the next step is to separate with that employee because they are not delivering results and you have done the best. You have motivated them, you have provided the tools, you have trained them, you have counseled them. Everything has been done. Everything under the book or in the book. If the employee does not improve, then a process should be initiated to separate with the employee. I believe I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Asante sana. Yes, sir.
How do you prioritize training areas when budget and time are limited?
How do you prioritize training areas, especially within a constrained time period?
And budget.
Sorry?
And also budget.
And also budget. Allow me to answer your question in 2 ways. One, when you conduct training needs analysis, you will be able to identify critical skills and knowledge that are required for a person to perform the job. And I'm talking about critical skills and knowledge. Those are the ones that we should be looking at when we are conducting training. Secondly, we should be able to evaluate the value of a job that is being done by employees. Even when we conduct salary surveys, we conduct what they call job evaluation. So job evaluation is determining the relative worth or value of the job. A job is valuable if it makes a critical contribution to the success of the organization. So if there are these jobs that are critical to success and there are employees who are lacking certain skills in these jobs, then we prioritize. We prioritize because the job is critical to success, and we prioritize because any mistakes will lead to failure. And that is why we conduct training needs analysis on the critical skills that people need for them to be successful. And then how is that related to the budget? In many organizations, we develop a universal budget for the HR function. And we do not specifically identify how much goes to training, how much goes to performance management, or how much goes to recruitment and selection. We should be able to break down all the cost areas or cost all the activities. And that's what you call activity budgeting. So if you identify all the activities in all the functions, you should be able to come up with a budget. Speaking of a training budget, you look at the critical roles or jobs to the success of the organization, and you look at the training needs of the employees, and then you prioritize. You prioritize even in terms of budgeting, that you allocate more money to those critical jobs that mean everything to the organization. So by doing that, you will have created a balance between the critical job and the budget lines that you have for different HR functions. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
Okay, thank you. We want to look at the next function, which is compensation and benefits, which is critical to all of us. The reason why we are working is because we want to be compensated for our efforts and get certain benefits for performing our jobs well, or some of the benefits are statutory. So we are going to look at the equity and the comprehensiveness of compensation and the benefits system. In terms of benchmarks, what are we looking at? Market competitiveness. How do we say that an organization is competitive in terms of compensation and the benefits? We will conduct a salary survey or a benchmark where we are going to compare ourselves with other players in similar industries in terms of the payment and the benefits. And we should be able to determine how much we are paying vis-a-vis the competitors and identify our position in this market. So there are 3 positions or levels of compensation. 1, above market rate. 2, average market rate. And 3, below market rate. We all know what will happen if we pay our employees below market rate. They will all go unless there are benefits to match the compensation in other organizations. So we can be said to be competitive if we pay above market rate or average market rate, so that when an employee compares their compensation and benefits with those of the other organizations, they will see that they are fairly equal. And in this way, we shall reduce the possibility of staff exit or turnover. Pay equity. This is fairness of our payment and benefits. Fairness. We may want to use several methods in order to ensure fairness. One is PBR. PBR, meaning payment by results. And secondly, you can use PRP, performance-related pay. That those people who perform well are paid well. Those who perform poorly are paid poorly. It is commensurate to their performance. And the payment by result, an example of which is a commission, that if a person is paid on commission, you can only be paid a percentage of your commission. The more checks you bring, the more money you are paid. If you don't bring any check, you can only be paid a sustenance fee so that you can survive the period. Otherwise, there's no organization can entertain employees who cannot bring in checks, especially for those who are working on commission. So performance-related pay or payment by results is what can ensure equity. And for those who are permanent and pensionable, we should ensure internal equity. How? By looking at the pay differentials. how much are people paid in the same or similar grades. So those differentials should not be too high. If they are too high, especially for 2 consecutive grades, they will demoralize people. And the next thing is a resignation letter that will be placed on our tables. So to ensure equity, let the grading system be fair by way of ensuring limited salary differentials, and 2, ensuring, especially for permanent employees, ensuring that there are overlaps between a lower grade and a higher grade. Why do we have those overlaps? That people who have a lot of experience, even if they are at a lower level, they should be able to earn more than those people who have come in recently at a higher level. So the overlap is between the highest paid person in a lower grade and the lowest paid person in a higher grade. There should be an overlap in between there. So that overlaps ensures equity. 3 is employee satisfaction with the benefits and compensation. How do we do this? The normal way is to conduct a salary survey internally, ask questions related to their level of happiness with what they are paid and what can be done to improve this payment. That becomes an element of audit. Number 3 or 4 is compensation per employee, the cost of compensation. One of the biggest costs associated with human resources is the staffing costs. Staffing costs include compensation. We have had other costs like training, which is a cost. Performance is another cost. But particularly compensation cost per employee is important because that is what employees take home at the end of a month or a given period of time. Why are we interested in cost? Because when it comes to cost cutting, we should be able to identify the cost centers in HR function so that we can reduce cost there. So compensation is an area that we can reduce cost, especially in hard economic times. How do we reduce cost? One is we don't renew the contracts of those people whose contracts are ending. 2, we freeze employment or hiring. Or 3, we can negotiate the salaries of employees and have a mutual agreement. Somebody will ask, Mwalimu, that will be in contravention of the Employment Act, that employees should not earn less than what they were earning or should not be reduced. Yes, in hard economic times, and when the reasons are valid, it's allowed for as long as it's a consultative process. So the employers and employees will weigh the options, the option of retrenching employees or the option of negotiating salaries and the benefits so that everybody gets something at the end of the month. So compensation cost can be determined for every employee so that if we have to do any prorated compensation, we can do an estimate on how much we are going to pay our employees either monthly, weekly, or even at the end of a period, especially for independent contractors. The other area to evaluate is benefits utilization rate. There are many benefits that we give our employees. And I'm happy that some organizations give a cafeteria kind of benefit system. Why do we call it cafeteria? Because it's a kind of menu, just like in a hotel, where employees can pick any benefit that interests them. So if you have a benefit like we should be able to determine its utilization. Recently, I had some organizations say that they have given car loans to their employees, and looking at the utilization rate, only 2 out of 1,000 people have taken a loan. That is a very low level of utilization of that benefit. That money which is allocated to car loans should be diverted elsewhere because the numbers are very low. Or if the budget is a lot and only 2 people are taking it, then we should be able to reduce that budget. Or when it comes to health benefits, where employees can be hospitalized or can be treated in selected facilities. This is a benefit that is given to employees, and it's not a legal requirement. So if we give it as a benefit, we should be able to find out how many people are utilizing this. Allow me to talk about the Gen Zs. Many of them are here, they don't want to get married. So if you give them education benefit, where are they going to take money if they are not getting married and getting children to educate, unless they educate themselves? So such a benefit is not likely to be utilized by the Gen Zs because they are not keen on having a family. Or another benefit could be long service award. The Gen Zs don't intend to stay in our organizations for a long time. Many of them wish that they work for 6 months or 1 year at most and they move on. Or housing allowance. The Gen Zs want to stay with their parents for as long as they want. Or if they don't, they want to stay in all the places which interest them. It could be Lavington for those of us in Nairobi. It could be Nyali for those of us who are in Mombasa or elsewhere. And they move to other places where they feel that they are comfortable. So giving them a house mortgage could be a waste of time or money. So you look at the level of utilization of these benefits and make a decision. Some money could be put somewhere and the benefits are not being utilized and it's a waste. The other aspect that should be audited is internal promotion, pay adjustment. Ideally, when employees are promoted, their payments should be adjusted upward. One, because of the additional responsibilities that they have, and 2, because of the cost of living in the market. However, there is a possibility that in some organizations, people can be given what we call dry promotion. Dry. This means that employees are promoted to a higher position without any payment adjustments. Very few people can accept this dry promotions, especially those people who want titles to be called directors. But because of the hard economic times, we don't eat titles, we want money. So when we adjust our promotion pay compensation, it should be upwards, and that is what we enjoy most. And lastly is pay review. Depending on our organization, our payment review should be done after every 2 years so that we reflect the changes in economic times. Where you have trade unions, pay reviews are done probably after every 3 or 4 years, depending on the cycle of the collective bargaining agreement. So if the cycle is 4 years, every 4 years we should be reviewing our pay system so that we adjust them accordingly. However, we should also be familiar with the need for having a policy that our reward and compensation system should be reviewed after every 3 or 4 years. And that becomes a guideline on the regularity of reviews. So that is it for auditing compensation. Employee relations is another function that we are going to audit. Employee relations has to do with the relationship between the managers and the employees, which should be cordial and democratic in nature. For it to be cordial and democratic, I've highlighted 3 key aspects. 1, fair treatment of all employees by managers. 2, respectful. Managers and employees respect each other. And 3, we are all legally compliant so that we avoid conflicts. In an environment where democratic principles are promoted, we are likely to experience fewer employee conflicts. What are these democratic principles? 1, participation. 2, involvement. And 3, consultation. With or without a union, we should be able to allow people to participate. We should consult them, and we should involve them in decision making so that we avoid conflicts, because the employees own the decisions because they have participated in them. So what are the benchmarks we are going to look at? 1 is the procedure for grievance handling. Grievances are complaints, and there are procedures. We must have an SOP in terms of grievance procedures. What is the first thing that is done? Reporting the grievance. The second thing, investigation. The third thing is taking action. And the last one is monitoring progress. The process could be longer depending on your SOP, that is standard operating procedure. This procedure should not take long. The faster the grievances are handled, the better for everyone in the organization. Because a grievance, which is a complaint which is not resolved, may turn out to be a conflict if there are so many grievances that are not addressed. So in terms of timeliness, take the shortest time possible to address those grievances comprehensively. We should not ignore any complaint, however remote they may seem. Secondly is the disciplinary action. This is one of the processes that has issues in many organizations. You skip a step in this process, an employee goes to court. And this court process can take long and can be costly. So the disciplinary process should be such that it is comprehensive and it is systematic. Lack of due process may cost us a lot of time and money. So I'm sure all our organizations have a disciplinary policy, and the policy stipulates the guidelines to be followed when an employee is indisciplined or commits a misconduct. There are those minor misconduct, in which case a warning can be given, or major misconduct, which we call gross misconduct. So in gross misconduct, disciplinary action is always taken, and that is immediate dismissal or summary dismissal. We cannot give people notice after they have committed a gross misconduct. So we should be able to identify those types of misbehavior or indiscipline, and also follow due process when we are taking disciplinary action. Communication is another aspect related to employee relations, that if we want to keep a working relationship, we should communicate effectively. So what does effective communication look like? 1, timely. 2, accurate. And 3, clear. Timely, accurate, and clear, so that we don't create misunderstanding. Or 2, we delayed information, and therefore action is also delayed. The other aspect in employee relations is feedback mechanisms. For example, in grievance, we should give the affected employees feedback. What action was taken, where, and when. So feedback is important to promote good employee relations. Conflicts, just like grievances, should be addressed in a timely manner and they should be given the attention they deserve. And lastly, exit interview. We conduct these interviews to establish factors associated with employee relations, which can be corrected. Maybe an employee is leaving the organization because of a toxic environment. That is the relationship between the employer and the employee. So exit interviews should be conducted to identify the causes of the exit. Next is health and safety, which is our second last function. And as we said earlier on in the morning, if the environment is unhealthy and unsafe, there will be many accidents and there will be many illnesses. So to audit this function, we look at the accident rate. How many accidents occur in a day, in a week, or in a month? The lower the number, the better, because of the cost associated with those accidents. So how do we reduce accidents? We ensure that we assign people the right positions. 2, we train them on a regular basis. And 3, we audit our environment to identify those risks which are likely to cause accidents or illnesses. Secondly is training completion rate. Earlier on, we said completion rate in terms of training and development. Here we are talking about training of employees on health and safety issues. So we should train employees when they join organizations during onboarding on matters to do with health and safety. So the induction program, which is the first training, should be complete. The other one is compliance with safety audits. In the morning, we talked about compliance, that all activities or processes and practices should comply with the labor laws. Which laws are we going to comply with? 3 of them. 1, the Employment Act, 2, OSHA, and 3, WIBA. These are acts of parliament that we should be complying with at all times. And that is why we said that we should create a checklist of the labor laws and identify areas of compliance so that we tick the boxes. Safety awareness. New employees should be aware of the health and safety issues and be made aware on a continuous basis. So awareness programs should be conducted either quarterly or monthly or annually so that people do not cause accidents either as a result of negligence or lack of knowledge. Another one is emergency drills, which we conduct. I believe we have conducted this. This shows our level of preparedness in case of an emergency like fire. We should be prepared. So those emergency drills should be conducted. Health and safety assessment completion, we should assess this. This could be the responsibility of the Health and Safety Audit Committee to do the assessments. So the HR manager should take the lead position to ensure that assessments are done on a regular basis by the audit committee. Lastly is the near miss reporting rate. These are near fatal accidents that occurred and the people missed death narrowly. This is very dangerous and we should be aware of it. And that is why we should always identify this, and this becomes part of our risk audit checklist. The last one, number 8, is succession planning. I said there are 8 functions. So in succession planning, we are looking for potential replacements for those employees who leave, either by way of retirement, resignation, or even death. What are the benchmarks? The coverage of succession plan. Who does it cover, or what does it cover? 1, training. 2, career development. 3, coaching and mentoring. And 4, succession plan itself. So the succession plan coverage should cover all those: training and development, coaching and mentorship, and delegation. Secondly is readiness rate. This is the number of people who are adequately prepared to take over positions of leadership. We should have an adequate number. And if we have senior positions like 5, an adequate number could be 25 or 15, meaning 3 people for every position that is likely to be vacant. So 3 people, or rather 5 people for every position is good enough. So that in case the first person who is identified to succeed, the other one declines, we go to the second, to the third, the fourth, and fifth. So we should have an adequate number of people who are ready to take over positions of leadership. Internal hire rate, we are looking at the people who are hired internally for promotion. Because sometimes we discourage people because we get people from outside and ignoring the internal personnel. On the talent or pipeline, we are looking at the number of people who have been adequately prepared to take over positions of leadership. That this pipeline means that there are adequate numbers for every position that falls vacant. And the other one is development plan completion. Every one of us have an individual development plan, that from where you are, you want to move to the next level, to the other, and to the last. So what plan do you have? One is to develop yourself in terms of skills and knowledge. And in that way, you should be thinking about the training courses that you could be taking so that you can achieve that plan. And the last one is time to fill those key roles. Because it's an internal promotion, we should be looking at a very short time, because we have ready people who are willing to occupy senior positions. Other aspects that are related to succession is diversity. We should not only promote one gender, for example. All people should be considered for promotion, irrespective of their background. 2 is the retention of high potentials. Who are these people with potential? These are people who have the training. These are people who have the experience. These are people who have the ability, or people who are talented. These are the ones to be considered for promotion. And if they are ready we should be careful to retain them. Otherwise, if they leave, then it means we have nobody to succeed those who leave. Success performance rate. So we are looking at the success rate of those people who have been promoted. Sometimes we promote people thinking that they will perform at a higher level, only to find that they cannot perform. What went wrong? Because we identified the wrong potential for those higher positions. Manager engagement relates to the involvement of other departmental managers in succession planning. So as HR managers, we should be able to consult people in different departments so that we can prepare a list of those potential successors. Lastly is cross-functional talent mobility. Are people able to move across departments? If Ondari, for example, Ondari is my name, have potential and have qualifications in finance, can I move to finance? Yes, I can move as long as I have the qualifications, especially in an environment where we promote job rotation and multi-skilling. Lastly is succession plan review. Every now and again, we should review our succession plans to ensure that they are successful, meaning that they are achieving the objectives that we planned for. So those are the 8 key functions that we perform in terms of audit, so that we ensure that we perform them effectively and we identify areas of improvement. I want us to move to another topic, which is spotting areas of improvement. So how do we spot this? We can spot them in several ways. One, identify a policy and other documents and review them. So what is our policy on the various functions like recruitment, training, and others? What does it say? And what is actually happening on the ground? Process walkthroughs is where a manager may sit in, for example, in a recruitment and selection exercise, and identify the procedures that are followed and identify gaps. Staff interviews, whether during recruitment for new hires or promotion or exit interviews, we should be able to spot areas of improvement because those are gaps. The other one is using HR metrics on turnover, training, readiness rate, which I have just discussed. And lastly, we do benchmarking against industry standards. Why? Because we want to borrow best practices. I remember in the morning, we talked about a framework called best practice framework. And we can do that by way of benchmarking. What are the best practices in relation to recruitment, training, performance management, compensation, and others? How do we overcome challenges? Just before that, what are the challenges that are associated with auditing all these functions? One is resistance to change, where people resist the audit outcomes. 2, data inaccuracy, especially when we do not follow due process or we do not use technological tools. 3, lack of documentation is another challenge. We said in the morning, everything must be documented. Recruitment and selection, documented. Training, documented. Performance management, documented. So that we can always make reference to these documents and also be consistent in the way we address issues. Limited expertise. I'm not sure whether our organizations have done HR audits before. If you have done them before, then you have expertise. But if you have not, it means that you don't have this expertise. And therefore, it's us who have gone through this training to go and train others or encourage others to join this program so that they can also become HR auditors. Lastly is time constraints. Auditing is not an easy process. It takes a bit of time, and therefore we should be able to allocate adequate time for this process. How do we overcome those processes? But before that, there are other compliance issues. Another one is inconsistent policies. The other one is technology limitation, where we are using old technology. The other one is mistrust. I remember Adan mentioned in the morning, how do you deal with confidentiality issues, especially on matters like disciplinary? Mistrust can crop in because some people may not know what you are going to use this information for. But again, we can build trust by way of working as a team, regular communications, and using information for the purpose intended. Lastly, another challenge is overlooking follow-up. If we ignore to monitor the processes in all the functions, then we end up with gaps. What are the next steps? So what do we need to do in order to improve? One, we look at the root causes of the weaknesses and gaps that we have identified. We can use various methods. For example, the fishbone analysis, where the head of a fish represents the problem and the bones represent the potential causes. So you can work backwards to find out what are the root causes of the gaps that you have identified. Secondly, the next step is to take corrective action. Where there are weaknesses or gaps, we should be able to recommend corrective measures. And as we said earlier on, these corrective actions must be actionable. And I will repeat, actionable solutions are those that identify specific gaps, identify persons responsible, establish timelines, and also establish the resource requirements. I've talked about timelines and the responsibilities under the action plans, and therefore this should not be a problem. Lastly, to address the challenges is a follow-up mechanism. This will help us to track the effectiveness of the implementation of those action plans. If we don't follow up, things might go wrong, and we will never know when things went wrong. To be on top of our game, we should always make regular follow-ups, perhaps quarterly or biannually, to ensure that things are on course. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite you to ask any questions that you may have so that we may close. Anne Sangira, I can see you. If you have a question or comment to make, please go ahead.
No question, sir, but I'm very grateful for the session. I've been able to learn a lot.
Sorry, can you add volume to your...
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
I don't have any question for now, just to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a great session. I've been able to learn a lot.
Thank you very much, Anne. Christine, if you are listening or watching, please ask a question. Okay, Mary, I've not heard your voice. If you can ask a question or make a comment, I'll be glad.
That's Mary Kay.
Yes, Mary Kay.
Okay, actually I asked a question, but
Sorry, I may have
the
forgotten.
question has been very insightful.
Yes.
And I mean, quite a lot. I was in the morning section and this session, so there's quite a lot I have learned that I didn't learn. And
Yes.
I am looking forward to the next session. And maybe just to say it was really very well presented clearly, and you are able also to answer the questions very effectively. So thank you, Mwalimu.
Thank you very much. It's humbling to hear such compliments. I'm happy and that you have benefited from this program. Bikwa, Emma, ask a question. Okay. So, with your permission. Yes, sir, Abdi.
Last one, I know you understand. What will you say is the single most important takeaway or action point that organizations should focus on when designing and implementing an effective HR audit framework?
The most important takeaway, actually, it's you who could be telling me the takeaway because I'm the trainer.
Having said that, I mean, like, just one point.
Yes.
That's what I meant. Thank you.
Okay. Several takeaways. One, we should be systematic in the way we conduct our audits. Two, ensure compliance with all the labor laws, with all the policies and the systems. And lastly, ensure regular monitoring and reviews to ensure that we stay on course. Thank you very much, Adam or Abdi.
Thank you, Dr.
So if there is no further question, I want to thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being attentive. I want to wish you a good evening and may God bless you until we see you again tomorrow morning. Asanteni sana.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Christine.
Bye.
Asante, Mwalimu.